So big thanks to Allie Kennedy, sharing her work, sharing her thoughts on film photography. Today I'm going on to photographer number two, if you will. Edwin Martinez is a gentleman that I have met recently who implements film into his workflow. Gonna have a great conversation today. Super excited to talk to him and to hear his thoughts on things when it comes to film and how he puts it to work. Um, I will give you a little heads up. Edwin does his own scanning, so he's a little different when it comes to the technical side of things. He likes to control that part of things, and so going to be really interesting to talk to him. I want to introduce Edwin Martinez. He is also a film shooter. Super impressive with what he does because you do your own scanning as well, right? Okay, that's one of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about. But tell us who you are, what you do, how you got into photography in the first place.
Sure. Well, like you said, my name is Edwin Martinez, and I am a wedding and portrait photographer. Basically, kind of just started shooting film when I was in college. I had been watching some people doing it on YouTube for a long time, and one of the things that always intrigued me was just the difference in what they were doing versus what a lot of other photographers were doing who did a lot of their work on a digital camera. Let's see, I got into it in 2018. Bought my first film camera off of a friend of mine. It was a Pentax ME Super, so very, very basic level camera. And it kind of introduced me into this world of analog shooting that I hadn't been exposed to before. Up until that point, I had owned I think it was like a Canon Rebel something. It was like a T3 or T5, one of the two. But yeah, very different way of shooting, very different process. Even the whole aspect of scanning and developing just seemed so daunting to me because I just really wasn't understanding any of it. But did some research, started reading a lot about it, and the more that I did that, the more it intrigued me. I think I'm a very technical person. I like to understand the technical side of things. So,
well, I would, talking to you, that is something that to me makes you stand out to other film shooters that I've talked with, because most film shooters shoot the film, take it into process, let the lab scan it, and then they take what they get.
Yeah.
You, on the other hand, scan your own stuff. Do you process your own film at all?
No, I want to.
No, I was going to say not yet.
Not yet, no. Yeah, I want to. I want to invest in things to be able to do that. That's just another thing to add to the process.
So the lab processes your film, but you then take it and do the scanning, which there's a lot of control as to how the image is going to look in the end based on that scan. Mm-hmm. So yes, the technical side of it, I can see that in you, and I'm guessing with a wife and kids, developing your own film it's a time issue.
Yep,
for sure. Okay, so you're a wedding and portrait shooter. How much of your workflow is film? How much is digital?
So let me think. Now I've got it to where it's I would say it's about 70-30, 30% of it being film, 70% of it being digital. Early on when I started, I really wanted to push it towards being more film than digital, but I think my perspective on what film is and how it's applicable to my work really changed over the years. Now I see film as more of a tool, like our cameras and lenses and all these other things. I think early on I saw it as this thing that I needed to have to somehow make me stand out, which I think can be a hard thing because in our area, I feel like we've got a decent amount of wedding photographers. Some of them
Absolutely.
doing very very unique work. And for me, starting, one of the things that I really wanted to do was find a way to stand out. And I think at the time, I wasn't seeing a whole lot of wedding photographers shooting film. Now, that's changed, and almost about everybody does it. And to the degree that they do it with and do it to is very different. But now I'm more intentional about it. I know typically whenever I go into a session or even a wedding, unless we talked about having an X amount done, I typically gauge that. And uh, you know sometimes I'll buy enough to do the whole wedding on film or the whole session on film.
Wow.
And have that with me. But most of the times I find that I'm only, like I said, doing about 30% of the whole session or wedding on film.
So let me ask you this: if a client came to you for a wedding, are they choosing to have film, or is it just you hire Edwin, you're going to get it because that's what he does?
So now it's just a part of what I do.
Okay.
Typically, I would say, for most sessions or even weddings, you can expect a few rolls, and that was the hardest thing to, be able to kind of build is a reputation for people, just knowing that that's what I do, and that's what they can expect. And a lot of that, we kind of discuss and clear out in conversation. Couples will come to me and say, "Hey, I know that you do film, but we just want digital,"
Oh, really?
and that happens too.
Okay.
But I think that's one of the things that took a while for me to get to, is people knowing that that's something that I do and reaching out, because that's something that they want to have. So unless they say that they don't want it, they'll have something in their wedding gallery that's filmed, and then we'll discuss what that looks like. Sometimes they'll say, "Hey, I know that you'll do an X amount of rolls for our film, but we want for our wedding or our session, but we want more." And then we'll have that conversation too.
Right. Okay.
So it's just about
So you
what
have
it is that
clients
they're
that are
looking for.
asking for film and asking not for film. You
Yes.
get a little of both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Where do you think clients get the clients that come and say we want film? Where do they get that knowledge that it's even out there?
Social media.
They're seeing other photographers that
Seeing
are
other
bragging that they're
Yep.
we want that look.
Yeah. And thankfully, I think for me specifically, I have people who, most of the times, I would say about 80% of the time, the people who inquire for their wedding, there are people who have been following me for a long time, or they're friends of a friend who I did a wedding for, or something like that.
Gotcha.
And so they see their work, they see what their friends got back, or they'll just see what I do through my social media accounts. And thankfully, I'm at a place where people know and see the kind of film work that I do, and so they know what to expect, and they know what it is they're gonna get whenever they ask me to do their wedding or their session or whatever that is. And that has been a very kind of satisfying thing for me, because I think, and we've had this conversation before about how there's just this trendy thing about film and about it having a particular look or a particular feel, or it being a certain thing. And I think early on, that was one of the things about my first experience with film that kind of changed my look on it and how I wanted to continue doing it. The very first wedding that I did, when I sent all that film off to a lab to develop and scan for me, I think that if I had sent it to anyone else, I probably wouldn't have continued doing it the way that I did. I may have not even done film for weddings anymore, but I sent it off to a lab that I had been following for a long time and really admire the kind of work that they do. And whenever I got the scans back, I think that really changed my thoughts on film and what it can be. Those scans were really clean. Even some of the ones that were slightly underexposed, they didn't have, the shadows weren't super muddy. They didn't have any like weird cast to the shadows. Some of the things that you might see online, really punchy greens in the shadows, or maybe sometimes those orange or magenta colors. None of that was showing up. Of course, they weren't super contrasted, and they didn't have these vibrant definitions of black and white. But that was kind of the lab's decision on giving me something that was just neutral and clean.
Right.
But yeah, I think now people just know what they're going to get from me whenever they reach out, and I think for me that's a really satisfying thing to know.
It's good for me to hear that, because one of the things I think that's changed in the industry, when I started shooting weddings, was in the 90s. And everybody wasn't a photographer back then.
Right.
So you built your business on word of mouth.
Yeah.
Today it seems different because everybody's a photographer. So everybody went to college with a sister whose cousin was a photographer. And so this word of mouth thing is a lot harder to build, I think. So to hear you say that's happening for you does my heart good, because it's like, you could be a great photographer, but you're not going to get word of mouth, because the bride can't tell her best friend that you're a photographer, and you get that wedding because that best friend already knows somebody who's a photographer.
Yeah.
And it's just one of the challenges that I see that's out there now.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. Well, last question before we look at your gear. Tell me, because I think listeners would want to know, how do you handle the cost? Because film is expensive,
Yes.
Processing gets up there. How do you deal with covering the cost? Do they pay more when they get a film wedding, or is it just part of the package?
So it definitely costs more. Just just in general, it costs more, and I kind of struggled with that a little bit whenever prices started to go up with film back in like 2020, 2021. And during that time, I had people ask me the same thing, like, price on film is up. Some labs are charging more for their services now too. Are you still going to do it? And I think one of the things that I thought about for me, and I mentioned earlier, is that film for me is a tool. It basically just allows me to achieve a certain thing that I want to achieve with my work. And at the end of the day, I could go without it and do everything digitally, but I know that by using a specific kind of film stock, or even a specific kind of format, that I'm going to get a look that would otherwise take me a long time to achieve on digital, or will already get me to a good starting place, I think, is how I think about it. And so now basically I just, whenever clients reach out about it, we have that kind of serious conversation about how film is a little more expensive, and 9 times out of 10 clients are receptive of that, and they'll go along with it because that's something that they want to do. And
Do you think the people that come in and say no, just shoot digital, are because of price?
So far it's been mixed.
Okay.
I've had people tell me that the film option is not within their budget, and so now that's why I kind of changed a little bit of how I do things, because now, at least even if you didn't want it, you're at least going to get a roll,
Okay.
or two or something like that, and it'll be a part of what I do, and that's something that I include in my cost. I have people who come in and specifically say, hey, I don't want any film, I just want you to do digital, and most of the time it's not necessarily about the price, it's just more about them knowing that that's what they want, and that's just simply the answer, is they're not interested in it.
Would you say shooting film has made you a better photographer?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, show us the gear you use
Sure.
to shoot film.
So over the years, I have bought and sold many cameras, but I bought this in 2021, I want to say, and since then, it's basically always been in my bag, and it's what I use, what I find myself coming back to pretty much all the time. It is an Elon 7, and
Any idea when this camera came out?
oh, I think let me see. I looked this up, and I think it was somewhere in the early 2000s.
Oh, okay. I was gonna guess late 90s, but
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So
So this is probably right before the world went digital.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think this and a couple other that Canon released were kind of in that last line of what they were doing for basically like a digital film camera.
So the
Because
guy
this-
that bought this new was the guy that was like, "I'll never go digital."
Yep.
And now you're shooting it professionally.
Professionally, yeah. And it's cool because basically it allows me to take all of my current EF lenses that I own.
Now, are you a Canon digital shooter as
Yes.
well? Okay.
Yes, I am.
Makes great sense.
Yeah, and that kind of was the biggest appeal of this to me, was that I didn't have to go out and purchase new lenses for it, which I recently owned a Canon A1.
Okay.
Loved it, fantastic camera. But if you're wanting to expand your collection of lenses for that camera, I mean, some of the prices on those lenses are what you could probably spend on this, on the same thing for your digital cameras.
Right.
And so to me, it just wasn't something that I wanted to do. And also, these lenses are older, and so sometimes you're getting a lens that may not be in the best shape, which if it's not, you have to spend money to get it fixed and get it in good condition. So this just made sense to me. It's got basically everything that I needed to do. Really high shutter speeds. It's even got, continuous frame shooting where you can shoot. I think the most that I've done is like 5 to 6 frames per second on this. It's not anything crazy, but
still, that's
yeah.
6 frames a second back in the film days was like blazing.
Yeah.
Now it's slow.
Very slow. Yeah. So yeah, this is what I do. This is what I use all the time. I just attach any of the lenses that I need on it and go to town.
It makes it very easy to go switch back and forth, I'm sure.
Yes. The only thing, and this is why I still to this day hang on to this. So the only thing about this camera, which is another topic of film within itself, is metering. For me, I think people don't realize how much metering correctly is a big part of shooting film, because there are cameras who are center weighted, where they'll just take the whole frame, but some of the older cameras didn't really. If you compare older cameras to what the newer cameras are doing, because some of the newer cameras have center weight metering too, but it's just not the same. The technology is very different, and a lot of times what it was doing was it was reading for those highlights, and so a lot of your photos are really underexposed.
Right.
But having this on hand is still super helpful. I can connect a flash to it and meter for flash if I wanted it to.
Right.
And it's just really accurate. This is too, to an extent, but I find myself that I'm still using this pretty regularly.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Edwin, I appreciate your time and all the insight. Fantastic. And so I'm going to take your picture now.
Great.
And I'm sure people have questions. They'll leave questions.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time, sir.
Thank you.